Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Discussions. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing the results from last night's Friday Night Smackdown, last night's AEW Rampage, and I'm also going to be talking a little bit about Road Dogg and CM Punk. And I'm going to start with that actually. I'm going to get right into that. Road Dogg was recently asked a question about if CM Punk will ever make a return to WWE, if he'll ever come to WWE after all the fallout with AEW, after everything that happened, will he go to WWE? And this question has certainly arisen since his beef with that of AEW and since Triple H has come to power in WWE. Now, obviously, Vince is back a little bit. However, his creative control does not seem to be as abused as it once was, and Triple H seems to seem as though he is still in some good creative control right now. So I think it's safe to say that if CM Punk were to come back, this would be the most opportune time for him to come back into WWE. On top of that, Road Dogg, being vice president of WWE currently, he was asked this question, and obviously, with him being vice president, he has a mind for this, and he probably knows more about what's going on than most people in the back, besides him and Triple H. And so that begs the question: is Road Dogg, is CM Punk coming back? What was his response? Well, Road Dogg had said, "Never say never," and oh man. In this business, when you hear someone say never, that's like saying it's gonna happen. It might not be tomorrow, might not be next week, might not be next month, even next year. It could be 20, 30 years from now. That's the thing with pro wrestling. When you hear someone say never, it's pretty much a guarantee it's gonna happen. It just might take some time. And so, I don't know. However, I can say I don't want to see CM Punk come back to WWE. I don't want to see CM Punk come back to wrestling in general. I know some people are under the impression, apparently, that he is still with AEW. I know some people are under the impression, apparently, that MJF can say what he wants on TV and CM Punk can't. Here's the difference, though. First of all, CM Punk could say whatever he wanted on that media scrum, right? That wasn't the problem. The problem was that he incited violence. He hit people in the locker room. He started a brawl in the locker room. The issue was not what he said. It had nothing to do with that. It had in terms of that's what started the fight, yes, but in terms of Tony Khan suspending him, it had nothing to do with what he said towards the EVPs or Hangman Adam Page. It had to do with the brawl that happened backstage, that he started, that him and Ace Steels had gotten involved in because they wanted to start it and they wanted to get, you know what I mean? And so for any ignorant fool out there that is comparing this to what MJF did on national television when he called Tony Khan a mark, first of all, that was a work. That was not anything in relation to what we saw with CM Punk. You can't compare the two by a mile. Now, I am going to apologize. I know I'm getting a little heated, but there's good reason for that. Because like I have been saying, first of all, I'm not that big of a CM Punk fan. I'm pretty sure I've said it on these episodes before. On top of that, I don't like when ignorant wrestling fans say things that they don't fully know. I'm you can fact check me because I could even be wrong, but I'm almost 99.9% certain that I am right with everything I just said. And if you don't like that, fine, then go to another channel. I don't care. Now, before I get too heated with this, and things take a turn, I'm just gonna kind of try and go, keep on the path here. Road Dogg had said never say never. I know CM Punk, and I know it seems to me here right now that the dude doesn't even want to come back to professional wrestling. It seems to me right now that the guy wants to stay home. He wants to do what he's doing on UFC commentary. He wants to stay on UFC commentary, and I don't find a problem with that. I don't have any issue with Phil Brooks. With CM Punk, the human being, Phil Brooks, I have no issue with him. But I'm getting a little annoyed with CM Punk the wrestler because he it was how many years? 9 years, 7 years, um 11 years, how long was I don't know, it was a long time. It was a pretty long ass time, right? And I'm just getting tired of people saying, that they want to see him come back, because that's what people were saying for 7 plus years, and he came back, and now he's gone, and half his fan base hates him and the other half loves him, mostly because they're all from Chicago, and that's his hometown. But other than that, I think a lot of his fan base at this point kind of abandoned him after that. And that's just my personal opinion. I have no facts on this. But again, if he were to go to WWE, I don't think it would be the best idea for him or for WWE as a company, because I just think CM Punk gets in his own head. And I think CM Punk. I think when he came to AEW and he cut that promo and he was talking about how WWE, like he was implying that WWE made him sick. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that he's the reason he was getting sick. He's the only toxicity. CM Punk can't be in a wrestling ring. Wrestling and CM Punk is a toxic relationship. That's my point. It's not WWE. It's all of it. It's Ring of Honor. It's WWE. It's AEW. It's anything revolving professional wrestling. Anything revolving a ring. I just think that CM Punk and wrestling weren't meant to be. But moving on, because I don't want this episode to be purely about CM Punk. Moving on, let's hop into our Rampage card, shall we? So, starting with our first match, Ethan Page versus Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Now, I had predicted Jungle Boy Jack Perry to win this, and I was correct. Jungle Boy Jack did win this match. On top of that, he won it with the assistance from Hook, and obviously Matt Hardy was trying to help out Ethan Page. Didn't really work out. Ethan and Matt kind of getting at each other at one point towards the end, and it's setting it up for a match in Dynamite this week, where we will see, excuse me, where we will see Ethan Page and Matt Hardy take on Jungle Boy Jack Perry and Hook in a tag team match. Now, obviously, Hook and Jungle Boy Jack seem to have a good in-ring tag chemistry, but I'm not sure what path this might lead them both down during this tag match. And I'm not going to give any predictions yet. I'll do that on Wednesday's episode. But moving on, we also saw Brian Cage versus Willie Mack. Now, Willie Mack did perform impressively, I'll admit. However, like I had said in last night's episode, my prediction was Brian Cage, and Brian Cage did win, which I think is very obvious. Brian Cage is set to have a match this Wednesday against Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon himself, and so I think Brian Cage needs that build-up. He needs that momentum going into this, and so it just makes sense for Willie Mack to, unfortunately for Willie Mack, because I think Willie Mack's been kind of been portrayed as a jobber these past couple of months, maybe even over the last year, to be quite honest with you. And so it is disappointing and it is upsetting. However, all that being said, nothing can take away from his performance, because he did have some very surprising athleticism at some points, and for a guy his size, he did some moves that were just out of this world for a guy his size. And so I think he should be very proud of himself, and I think the fans were very quite impressed with his performance, in my opinion. Now, we also saw Jade Cargill and Layla Gray taking on the Vanity Sisters. Now, again, these were pretty much nobodies, right? And I had predicted Jade Cargill and Layla Gray were going to win hands down easy, and they did win. Now, Layla Gray performed semi-well. Jade Cargill obviously just kind of bulldozing through him, and you could tell Jade was getting annoyed, and the fans were getting annoyed. Even on the YouTube comments, people are getting tired of this idea of Jade Cargill fighting these nobodies, and I am too. First of all, she herself is a great wrestler, and she deserves more respect. She deserves better matches. And second of all, the women's division deserves a moment to shine. Like Hikaru Shida, Anna Jay, Ty Mello, women that aren't, Willow Nightingale, women that aren't necessarily being utilized properly, deserve a chance to be seen and shine. And they're they're pretty much sitting in the back doing nothing because Jade Cargill is fighting nobodies that don't deserve the time. This is where I get upset with Tony Khan. Tony Khan, he has his ups and downs, and his downs are like really far down to the point where it's like this dude doesn't know how to run a professional wrestling company. Now, before I get too upset on that, moving on, we also saw Daniel Garcia versus Action Andretti. Now, this one I was a little controversial with. If you guys remember, I believe I predicted Daniel Garcia, and I was a little controversial with it in the sense that, like I had said, Action Andretti's been very impressive, and he's been beating these bigger stars. However, Daniel Garcia himself is still up and coming, and so I was fairly confident Daniel Garcia was going to be the guy to snuff out Action. And it wasn't a bad match. My only critique is Action Andretti's finish. I'm not a fan of the running shooting star press being a finish. I just think there could be a lot better moves than that to finish off your opponent, especially the fact that he managed to defeat both Chris Jericho and now Daniel Garcia with that move is a little annoying. It's a little upsetting. Now, moving on from the matches and getting into last night's segment between Eddie Kingston and Ortiz, I've been talking about these past couple of episodes actually, with this idea of Eddie Kingston and Ortiz and the House of Black going at it. It's safe to say that the House of Black has successfully split up and destroyed the friendship of Ortiz and Eddie Kingston. Ortiz obviously disappointed and upset with Eddie Kingston for not tagging him in during the match, yes, but also for what he did, or what he was going to do to Julia Hart, hit her with a steel chair. And Ortiz didn't seem to like that. He confronted Eddie about it last night. Eddie came out with a steel chair, and Eddie was trying to calm him down, trying to talk him down. Ortiz mentioned Eddie's mom, his dad, things you really shouldn't mention about Eddie Kingston. And Eddie just snapped, hit him with the steel chair, whacked him a few times, and left the ring. And I don't, some people were saying, is this a heel turn from Eddie Kingston? Did we see Eddie Kingston turn heel? I don't necessarily think it was a heel turn. I think this was more so just a message that Eddie doesn't take crap from anybody. You can be a friend of his for 30 years, like Ortiz was. He doesn't take crap from anybody. And I think Eddie Kingston is an incredible athlete, an incredible wrestler, and I think he's proven himself time and time again. And I think, personally, he is going to go into, like, this rivalry with House of Black, I think, is going to shape him to get back into that weekly Dynamite spot that he was once in. Because, first of all, he deserves that spot, and second of all, I think House of Black needs to take Eddie and say, listen, I think they can take this storyline to another level, to the point where they have Eddie go to such a dark place that he's just this, I don't even know how to explain it. He's just this, he's like Eddie Kingston, but 10 times worse. And I know that's almost impossible to even imagine. But that's what I'm saying. Like, could you even imagine that? That's where I think that would be entertaining as hell, right? Now, again, I'm so intrigued by the Eddie Kingston thing. Like, I'm very intrigued by that because, first of all, I thought that the segment was short, but it was decent. And I think what I would like to see in the future is I would like to see Tony Khan give Eddie Kingston and Ortiz more time, because I think this is something that needs more time. This is something that needs to be developed in more than 3 minutes. And for those of you that remember, when Eddie Kingston and CM Punk were going at it, their promo was what, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 12 minutes? And this was like 2 to 3 minutes long of a segment. That is upsetting. This is where I get infuriated with Tony Khan. This is exactly what MJF had said in his promo before he left for 3 months. Tony Khan only cares about the ex-WWE guys. He only pays the ex-WWE guys the best amount of money. And he only gives them the right amount of time. I mean, Eddie Kingston is one of the hardest working wrestlers, and he's one of the In my opinion, he's a homegrown AEW star in the sense that he said it himself. Wrestlers and commentators have said it themselves. When Eddie was in the Indies, he wasn't getting over. He was wrestling in the Indies for years and he was not finding his place. And then he went over to AEW and he actually started to get somewhere. And he is still getting somewhere, and he's getting cheers and chants for Eddie every single time he's out there. Tony Khan needs to step it up, man. I'm being dead serious. Scene. I just hope to see more out of it. Truly, I hope to see more from this. Like, this is a little disappointing. This segment was great. It needed more time, I think. Better build up. Because you could tell it was rushed. You could feel it in the environment. You could just feel it was rushed. And I wish there was more. I wish they had more time so they could actually do their best work. Alright, so moving on to Friday Night Smackdown. We saw... I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really impressed with last night's Friday Night Smackdown. I think the match I was most impressed with was the Viking Raiders versus Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. Now, apparently, I was wrong. It wasn't a tag team turmoil match last night. They were setting up for a tournament. It looks to me as though the teams that are advancing are Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, Hit Row, Legado del Fantasma, and Imperium. Now, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus knocked off the Viking Raiders, so that prediction was unfortunately wrong because I had predicted the Viking Raiders. However, I am happy for Drew and Sheamus. I think hopefully they'll, kind of get somewhere and move up the totem pole in terms of tag teams more. Brawling Brutes took on Imperium. Imperium won. I'm very pleased with that, to be quite honest, because Imperium's a great tag team, and they deserve to move up more and more and get to the tag titles. And I would love to see Imperium take on the Usos for sure. Now, Legado del Fantasma also won their match. They took on the Maximum Male Models. To be honest with you, the Maximum Male Models have still not been very impressive. I think the most impressive thing I've seen with the Maximum Male Models is Massey, and even then, I think Massey would be better if he... I feel like both Massey and Mansois they have a good concept going, but they kind of need to change the gimmick a little bit, make it a little more serious, make the wrestling aspect of it a little more serious, and then you have a team. Because I do think those guys work well together. I do think those guys have good wrestling capabilities, and I do think that the idea of this fashion thing, I do think it, like the style and everything, I think kind of works for them. I think they need to make the gimmick a little more serious and stop treating it as such of a joke, I think that's the worst thing you can do in professional wrestling, is have a gimmick where you take the gimmick so far that when you actually get to the wrestling aspect of it, it's treated like a joke. And that's kind of what's going on with Maximum Male Models. And so I am going to say straight up that even before Vince came back, Triple H kind of flopped with Maximum Male Models. Like, that's just the one thing that Triple H did not properly salvage. Did not properly, really use well, in my opinion. But again, this is just my opinion. Take it or leave it. I don't really care. We also saw I already said that. We also saw Hit Row beat Los Lotharios. Now, I'm going to say this now. I was impressed with Los Lotharios. They did a very good match, in my opinion, and I think this could finally be their time to maybe turn face again, which would be great because I think Humberto Carrillo works great as a face, and I think Angel Garza is such a great... I think both are great athletes, and I think if you go back to NXT and you go back to Angel Garza being in NXT, I think you have, peak cruiserweight division right there. Like, Angel Garza and Lio Rush for the cruiserweight title was some of the best stuff ever, and it's hands down peak Angel Garza was in NXT. That was his peak. And I think him and Humberto can get back to a point where they are on top of the mountain. And they kind of proved it last night. Hit Row did get the win, yes, but first of all, they had to do underhanded tactics. And second of all, it wasn't even like a hands-down pin. It was a roll-up. And so this leaves room for Los Lotharios to kind of come in and be, keep kind of rising up. They already fought the Usos, and yes, they lost, but there's always room for improvement. And I think Triple H and the rest of creative, I think they're doing well right now with that of Los Lotharos. I think it's a good concept that they have going for them. I think Los Lotharos are going to do very well. As they continuously go down the line and keep going on towards the future. Now, in terms of the women's division, we saw Sonya Deville and Charlotte kind of going at it in terms of promos. Charlotte really kind of laid into Sonya, and then Adam Pearce tried to get involved in Sonya with a forearm straight to the face of Charlotte Flair. I'm not sure exactly what this means, if we're going to see a singles match between the two at the Royal Rumble, or if we're just going to see Sonya enter the Royal Rumble. I don't know what the plan is. It almost sounds like Sonya Deville wants Charlotte to enter the Rumble herself. I don't know, per se, or maybe defend her title at the Rumble. I don't know exactly what Sonya's trying to lead up to here, but it sounds like something very interesting, and I don't know. I'm a little curious as to what we might see. If we'll see a one-on-one action between these two at the Royal Rumble, if we'll see something bigger than that, better than that, maybe, I don't know. Now, we also saw, I'm trying to think of some other matches. Were those? We also saw. Sorry guys, I can't think of what else. Let me see here. Make sure. I just want to fact check everything. Make sure I'm correct in saying this. Yes. We also saw LA Knight in action against, well, a nobody, a jobber, if you will. And on top of that, we saw the return of the Firefly Fun House. Now, man, the Firefly Fun House. First of all, that's pretty interesting. For a while there, it seemed like Bray Wyatt was, kind of being a little slow and getting back into the swing of things and bringing back this storyline of everything, of everything that happened right before he was released. And now he's kind of jumping back into things. He's starting to kind of fit his groove again. And I don't know if this is because Uncle Howdy attacked Bray and knocked some sense into him. I don't know what it is, but it seems like things are starting to look clearer for that of Bray Wyatt. It seems like things are finally starting to align for Bray Wyatt. And this is good because come the Royal Rumble, Bray Wyatt and Alexa Bliss are going to be in the same building. Both seem to be turning. The switch seems to be flipping inside both of their heads at the exact same time. And so this is going to be really interesting come Royal Rumble, right? Which honestly, it's next Saturday. It's not far at all. We got 7 days. This is going to be really, really interesting. To see that, Now, we also saw Karrion Kross and Scarlett cut a little bit of a promo, a little bit of a segment. Karrion Kross essentially saying that, Rey Mysterio's time is up. And Karrion Kross wants to be the one to hang up Rey Mysterio. And it sounds to me like next week we will see Karrion Kross versus Rey Mysterio, which will be interesting, as Rey Mysterio has declared for the Royal Rumble. So on Friday, he's going to fight Karrion Kross, and then the next night go into the Rumble match against 29 other men. And it sounds like Karrion Kross is planning to do the exact same. So this is going to be very interesting for me, because either man who wins might get advantage going into the Rumble, and in the sense that if, say, Rey wins and then goes into the Rumble, and him and Kross meet each other in the ring at the Rumble, this could give him the advantage in the sense that he already beat Kross, he knows Kross well throughout their match the previous night, and he could easily eliminate him. And same goes for Kross if Kross wins on Friday. And so this is interesting. This is almost like a preview to the Royal Rumble, if you will. Now, for our last segment in Friday Night Smackdown, we saw Roman Reigns and the rest of the Bloodline except Sami Zayn. I don't know what's going on with Sami. It seems to me as though Roman is starting to kind of change with Sami. He's becoming distant with Sami. He's excluding Sami more than he was in previous weeks. And so this is interesting. I almost think that Sami is getting a little too powerful, maybe, and Roman is starting to get nervous that Sami is going to try and take away his title. It's like what Roman was saying, you want to be me. He's getting nervous that Sami wants to replace Roman, and he's getting nervous that Sami is getting powerful enough to actually do it and actually be able to pull it off. Now, so it was just the Usos, it was just Solo, it was just the Wise Man, and just Roman in the ring. Usos and Solo on the outside, kind of guarding things. Well, actually, no, I think Solo was inside the ring, not 100% certain. And then Kevin Owens came storming in, took out Solo Sikoa, stunned Roman Reigns, took out the Usos. I mean, he really took out the Usos. Super kicks left and right, stunners, got back into the ring, confronted Paul Heyman, signed the contract. Roman Reigns got back in, pop-up powerbomb to Roman Reigns right through the contract table, and then Sami Zayn comes out to confront Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens runs out into the crowd, and this is interesting because I don't know what side Sami is on anymore, because Sami didn't immediately get into the ring. Sami didn't immediately go after Kevin Owens. So this isn't all just on the bloodline, right? The change between Sami and the bloodline is not all on the bloodline. It is not all one-sided. Sami has to be having mixed feelings. He has to be having mixed emotions about this. And I mean, how could you not? Your former best friend, a guy who's been in, a major part of your career for 20 years, it's impossible to not have mixed emotions towards this. But when it comes to the bloodline, when it comes to the head of the table, when it comes to the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, I don't think those mixed emotions are going to be something he takes into consideration when he starts to analyze Sami Zayn and his place in the bloodline. And that's what worries me for Sami. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude tonight's episode. I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's. Thank you all for tuning in, as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.